I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I personally raised my own LSAT score from a 152 to a 175. Now, I coached several of my students on their biggest LSAT challenges and did my best to make my answers to them as concrete and tactical as possible so you can take those insights and apply them to your LSAT prep for a quick score boost. Here are the best moments from those coaching calls.
I'm working full time, so I don't study for as many hours as I'd really like to and as I feel like I need to. But I've gotten a lot out of your sessions. I've actually already taken the LSAT once, and I was pretty under my target score. I'm in this really bad habit of procrastinating taking full-length exams as practice because I'm very intimidated by the results, and it just shows me like everything I need to work on. And I think ideally the results of a practice test is it can show you where to focus on next. But when I see those results and I see that I need to work on a little bit of everything across the board, I'm really discouraged.
It's a common issue to procrastinate on taking those full-length exams. I get it. You're not the only one. People either take nothing but practice tests or they do none of them. And of course, you want something in between. So I guess my question is, in what ways are you currently working on pacing and endurance?
I am doing more timed sections.
Have you ever done 2 sections back to back?
No.
Okay. So my suggestion for you is something to try out would be, rather than jumping straight into doing a full-length practice test, what if you did reading comp then LR or LR then reading comp? So you do reading comp mixed with one of the others.
Okay.
Just that. So we're just doing 2 back to back.
Okay.
Then you level up. You do 2 back to back, 10-minute break, 1 more. The third one to get the variety.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that sounds manageable. I don't know why in my brain I was like, it's all or nothing. You sit down for the 3 hours now, or you like never. So I think that's really great advice. And then I've heard and seen and read that we should review everything we got wrong. Do you time box like the amount of time to do like a post-test review? Because for me, I feel like I could just review forever. And I'm like, how do I know when I'm done and I can take my next one?
It's a good question. Yeah, it can take a really long time. I might time box it by days. So let's say you're doing 1 exam a week. You could then have 1 day devoted simply to taking the exam, and then 2 days devoted to reviewing anything you got wrong or had difficulty with. And this amount of time will actually vary based on how many you got wrong or had difficulty with and how many hours you have available in a day. But you also have your calendar of the next practice test coming up in 1 week, or you could be doing 2 exams a week, or you could be doing, as we've just discussed, building up bit by bit, 2 sections, then 3.
Okay.
And you also can play with raising the bar on what constitutes a question worth reviewing.
What do you mean by that?
So if there was a tiny bit of uncertainty, maybe you don't review it for that long because you have other priorities. You have questions that gave you more trouble that are more worth reviewing. Or you set a goal in terms of how many full-length exams do you want to do? How many sittings of 2 sections or 3 sections do you want to do? So maybe you do 2 sections today, then 3 sections tomorrow. Take a day to review all of that, and then do 4 sections, a full-length sitting, like 4 days from now. And then you start doing 4 section exams alternating with 2 or 3. So let's say next week, you've built up to doing your first 4 section exam. You take a day or 2 to review that. Then you do 2 sections. Take a day to review that. Then do 4. You've got to get at least 5 or 6 4 section exams under your belt before test day to work on the endurance factor. Just suggesting that it doesn't all need to be 4 sections exams.
Got it. Yeah, increasing speed. I've been focusing on that. And so I've actually found your blog really interesting about increasing or improving your short-term memory recall, your working memory. I'm also learning a new language on the side for personal reasons, but I found that kind of helps improve working memory. I don't know if you have any other advice in terms of like just growing that muscle.
With the exam a month away, you want to focus primarily on doing actual LSAT questions. The other stuff has a peripheral benefit, but I would actively recommend those things for someone who's got years before they take it.
Okay, got it.
I always was passionate about law, but just couldn't figure out the LSAT, to be honest with you. And so right now, I think I made some progress with my prep. I'm realizing more and more it's a comprehension issue. That's why maybe it's taking me a long time to complete questions. And especially when I time things, the accuracy goes down significantly. Reading comp is just a disaster. LR, I'm getting better with. So want to get your understanding of where do you think I should go with this? And yeah, and also I've been following you for 10 years. The kids you're tutoring now were like 10 years old back then. It's funny.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm glad you've been following my stuff for a while. I'm glad you found it useful. So are you speaking reading comp specifically, or is this carrying across to other sections as well?
That's a good question. Reading comprehension, definitely an issue. Like sometimes I'll read something and it'll take me time to internalize it. And sometimes I don't even understand what I read. And then after I reread it, I start understanding it. But it takes me a little bit of time to do that. And then when I get to the questions, just plug and play. It's a lot easier. My accuracy is way higher, but it's just a comprehension issue. LR, the first 10 questions generally are easier. It's usually 80 to 100% on that part. But then towards 16 through 23, my accuracy goes down a lot. What do you think I should do? I can say I'm successful. I have my own home. I'm making well above 6 figures. To me, it's like I start at a big law firm or I don't go at all kind of thing. And I want to be guaranteed with, let's say if I go to a school like UT Austin or whatever, the Columbia or Northwestern, I'll be guaranteed or a big law job. So that's where I'm at. It's either I go to a top school or I don't go at all. That's the thing.
Gotcha. So I hear what you're saying, that it's got to be a top 14 or equivalent school where it's going to maximize your chances. Never guarantees, but maximize your chances of getting that big law 6-figure job that makes it all worthwhile. And so that means you want that 170 plus. How do you get there? It's by getting the LR questions in 16 to 23 correct. It's about getting reading comprehension perfect or very close to it. Not easy to do. Can you do it in a little less than 2 months? Maybe, maybe not. Hard to say. I know that you're working, so you're busy. You carve out the time you can, maybe a couple hours a day at most on weekdays and then a bit more on the weekends. You're getting harder questions wrong because they're hard, especially in the logical reasoning section. For reading comp, maybe there's some strategies to apply as well, though, when it comes to breaking it down in more simpler language, focusing on the structural elements. And the deep dive videos in the course for reading comp focus on exactly that. So I'd encourage you, watch those class recordings, attend the reading comp classes every single week. Then for logical reasoning, of course, it's about having solid understanding of the different question types. And then also making sure that you can review in depth to identify and articulate exactly what your mistakes are and where they're coming from. So the Socratic review method, a lot of the logical reasoning workshops focus on that. I also bring it into the reading comprehension as well.
Okay. And I noticed like these are interdisciplinary, the Socratic review method with LR and reading comp, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. It carries across. It's all about interpreting language and figuring out tempting wrong answer choices, unappealing right answer choices. What exactly are the tricks and traps that you're falling for? So slowing it down, not just taking exams after exam, but really focusing on them in depth.
Awesome. I think that's a good starting point. I'm going to definitely, I'll be honest with you, I've just been so slammed with work. I was just focusing on, because I've been learning this stuff for such a long time, but I'm realizing there's also gaps in my learning too. Completing those questions on time too, that is very difficult. And that goes back to comprehension.
Yeah, so your accuracy is high on what you're getting to.
Yes.
But there's still a lot more work to be done because you've got to be able to get to everything, which means you're going to have to speed up on some of the easier questions that you're already getting. But if you speed up on them more, maybe you'll lose some there also. So there's actually quite a bit of work to be done. And I sense your determination. I know that you want to get there, but it's going to be about fundamentally changing the nature of your prep to speed up, get through everything, make some mistakes along the way, and then review those mistakes in depth so that you can see, are you getting easy things wrong because you're giving yourself way more time than you can actually allow, or because you actually understand them? Some cases it'll be one, some cases it'll be the other, but it's not just watching the basic foundational videos to get the simplest understanding and then just take tons of PTs. It's about beyond the theoretical material, the conceptual material, where it tells you strengthen questions, ask you to strengthen, use the top 3 ways to strengthen a question, an argument. It's beyond that. You've got to get to the point where you're not just absorbing those simple breakdowns, but rather changing what you're doing to not just take exams, but to review them in depth, attend the classes where we're reviewing them in depth, and then watch the recordings of all the different previous classes on different question types when you ID weak areas, for example.
Awesome. That's really great direction. Thank you so much, Steve. Yeah, I think I definitely do need to change the nature of my prep, because I see kids within a couple months, their scores skyrocket. So I'm like, there's definitely something I'm doing wrong here.
I just took the LSAT. And so the biggest thing for me was like my timing. I would say I probably should have did more prep tests. But also like a big thing for me is like the reading comprehension area, because I am like more of a slower reader. So like, I don't really know how I can get to everything at one time or in 8 minutes, I guess, the whole like section.
I hear you. Okay. So with regard to the timing, I'll share the same idea I shared before. 8:45, just an average. 8 minutes. Again, there's variation in difficulty. So I wouldn't time individual passages. I would only time them in the context of a full section. Some passages are easier than others. How do you approach a reading comp passage right now?
Right now, I pretty much go through the passage, like reading the passage, and then I go through the questions and go through whichever one I think is easier to answer first. So normally like the shorter ones, I guess, I go through those first because they are a little easier to me than the more lengthier ones. But that's really it. And also sometimes I feel like I have a little bit of trouble like remembering like certain stuff from the passage as well.
When you read it, are you taking notes? Are you making any sort of annotations on the passage or on your scratch paper?
Yeah, sometimes I take notes like after each like paragraph that I read, but then sometimes I feel like it takes up too much time. Sometimes like when I write stuff down, I feel like it might not have been as important as I thought it was. And so it seems like a waste of time, basically. I didn't really focus on reading comprehension as much because I felt like at first, like I read all the time. So it's like, it wouldn't be like where I needed to focus on as much. So I really focused more on like logical reasoning. But then later on, like when I started going through it, I noticed that I'm like struggling there the most.
So you've got some time to experiment.
Mm-hmm.
You've got over 2 months. So I would be thinking about developing a consistent note-taking strategy as well as a consistent approach and an idea of where to allocate time and what to look for. Reading comprehension is more personal than any other section of the exam because you've been reading your whole life. You've been reading in different contexts. You've done reading comprehension on perhaps the SAT or the ACT or other standardized exams, or even simply in high school and college. A lot of it's a lot of reading comp. So not just one strategy will work for every single student. I typically find those who do the best in reading comp tend to mark and write down very little or not at all. So I would tend towards less, but it could serve you to write down something.
Okay.
So I'd suggest do a handful of passages one way, a handful of passages the other way, meaning do a handful where you write down nothing at all. Do a handful where you take some minimal notes. Do a handful where you use the annotation tools, clunky as they are, like the highlighting and the underlining on the digital LSAT site on LawHub, for example, and see what feels the best for you and what gets you the highest accuracy rate. So I'm not going to simply just give you the answer like this is the way to go about it. I'm going to suggest experimentation and then seeing what works in the end.
Okay.
There are a couple of drills I recommend for you. One is read a passage, take some notes, and then attempt the questions using only your notes and your memory. This is obviously not realistic. You will be able to go back to the passage on test day, but as an exercise, how would you engage with the passage differently if you weren't going to be able to go back to it? How would you read differently? And still take only a reasonable amount of time on that initial read. Obviously, with this drill, this is untimed. You might take 20 minutes on a passage versus that theoretical average of 8:45 that you should never actually hold yourself to. Maybe it takes 20 minutes, maybe you take 30 minutes, but as an exercise, you're really digging into the depths of your memory. You could also take some simple summaries, use only your summaries. You could take more detailed notes and use only those notes. You could aim to simply read for the main idea and knock out those questions, all the general global nature questions.
All right, thank you.
Working 40 hours a week, has some of its drawbacks, because you can only put so much quality time in to the point that you are either just doing yourself a disservice of studying. You could study more, but it's probably not going to be good quality. And I'm trying to space out my day, even just to wake up a little bit earlier. But so far, it's not happening because I work from 8 to 5 and then I go straight to class right afterwards. So it's like, I want to sleep.
Yeah, I can certainly understand that. On your weekends, how many hours are you typically studying?
I would say 6 to 8 per day. I try to give myself a day off, because if I do 7 days a week, I'm positive I'm going to crash and burn.
You're clearly willing to put in the work. You have a full-time job. You're attending class in the evenings, and then you're doing the bulk of your studying on the weekend. But 6 to 8 hours in one day is still a lot. 8 hours in one day of LSAT, I think, is probably too much for most people. I could imagine it being possible to make it work, though, if you were to mix in a study group on that day so that you're getting a social element in there as well. There could be a little bit of chit chat. There could be a little bit of connection. It's not just doing nothing but LSAT problems for 8 hours.
Should you be trying to take a practice LSAT every weekend, or you think it's just study 1 week, take an LSAT another week, and then just opt out? Or is it okay to take a practice LSAT every weekend?
It's okay, assuming that you have enough of a foundation to get value out of it.
I remember in my logical reasoning review, there were some questions that really tested your focus or your know-how of conditional logic. And if you didn't know the thorough understanding of conditional logic, you're probably going to get this answer wrong. I took my first official test, and having it being my first official test, I just crashed. So I feel like what I took out from that, yeah, I did horrible, even though I was practicing pretty decently prior to. Having the experience of taking that test firsthand and knowing what to expect now is going to be so beneficial for me.
You've got enough time where you can make anything happen over the next 3.5 months. As for the general question, a thorough understanding of conditional logic, I think a lot of people who take the LSAT don't really have that. And you can certainly prepare to gain that understanding. But taking practice LSATs can give the exposure to some of the nuances of conditionality if the student's not going to encounter them in isolation in a separate lesson, for example. I have tons of lessons covering conditionality, conditional chains, contrapositives, things of that nature. So someone who's lacking that, I tell them, watch that video in the course library. I've got it covered from many different angles. But I could also say there's lots of lessons in the course library. Maybe they'll cover something else before taking their practice LSAT. So that's fine. You don't need to have that level of depth to benefit from a practice LSAT. But I would also want someone to at least know what the contrapositive is. And then the common pitfalls of reversal and negation. Like that would be, I think, enough on that particular topic. Ideally, I just want someone to know what's logical reasoning in general, what's reading comp in general, and to have some prior familiarity and exposure.
Yeah.
But that alone could be enough to do a practice LSAT a week and benefit from it. I just wouldn't want someone who's totally new to it to take a practice test and then get really discouraged by the results.
No, of course not. No. That will kill you.
But for anyone who's been in the course for a couple of weeks or a month and has attended some live classes and watched the foundational videos, I'd feel comfortable telling them, yeah, go ahead and take a practice LSAT a week, but take those results with a big grain of salt, knowing that it does not reflect your ultimate potential, especially if you're taking the LSAT 3.5 months from now. There's plenty of time to learn and improve along the way. And the practice LSATs plus review can help you do that.
When I did sit for the exam the first time, and like I had told you before, I did not get the score that I wanted. And I was actually scoring on an average 10 to 12 points higher on my practice test than I did on the actual exam. When it came down to it, it wasn't a surprise to me on that actual day because I did have a freak out. Oh my gosh, it's happening. This is the real thing. Any tips or tricks as far as when I initially start a practice test or initially sit for the exam as to just staying calm, cool, and collected?
Yeah, I have a ton of resources on test day prep specifically in the course. It's like reducing test day nerves and anxiety and simulating the conditions. We talked a little bit earlier about that ritual of sitting down for your practice tests like it's game day itself, meaning that you've already researched all the things on ProctorU in terms of what's allowed, what's required, what's prohibited, what to do, what not to do, all of that stuff. And then having a system in place where even if you have a momentary blank out or a fight or flight response sort of thing, or you need a warm up, like you've got that taken care of so that you follow these specific steps no matter what. I'm not saying these, like there is one set of steps to follow. We've got to customize a set of steps for you based on your unique workflow as you go through a reading comp passage or whatever it is. And so that's the sort of thing we could discuss in like the group coaching mastermind context in the course, in the group setting. And then alternatively, there's also all the test day prep videos specifically that'll go into far more depth.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. That's super helpful. When it comes to reading comp, I did find when I first started studying, and now that I'm a handful of months into this process, a lot of the passages I found, to put in the most simplest terms, very boring. And I found zoning out. And I did see at the very beginning of the course in one of the foundational videos that was posted about reading comp that you had recommended reading specific articles and stuff like that to get your brain in the comfortable zone of reading those lengthy, wordy articles and stuff like that. So just off the top of your head, do you have any recommendations of articles I could be reading to just better familiarize myself with boring passages and long big boy passages like that?
Sure. What topics don't you like for passages?
Oh, humanities. That's my worst. That is definitely my worst.
Okay. Can you be more specific? Are there any passages in particular that you didn't like, or any topics within humanities you don't like, or is it just all of it?
It's unfortunate to say, but just any humanities passage that I get, it's just immediately I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. This is the humanities one. And it would just overwhelm me, and I would just be second guessing myself while I was going through answer choices, which I usually don't do with the science passages or the law passages. I can easily just go through and confidently answer them. But I did find with the humanities passage, it was more of a struggle for me. And I was second guessing myself going through, not really as confident as I should be with those guys.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I would recommend Arts and Letters Daily, aldaily.com.
Okay.
They link to a bunch of different articles on the kinds of topics that show up in humanities passages. And so just reading those and getting more comfortable with them and getting more familiar with the kinds of topics they cover, it'll definitely translate over to LSAT reading comp passages. And then of course there are nearly 400 released passages. And so there's truly nothing better than just looking at the old passages themselves. You could pull from the first 10 or 20 exams that you might not otherwise ever touch and just read them over your morning coffee. That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
My only problem now is, unfortunately, necessary assumption, inferences. I'm like a mad woman, like when it comes to inferences. Like I've been like writing down like all my like entire thought process. I could show you like my entire like spreadsheet of everything I've been doing. It's a little crazy. I've been reading a lot of your blog posts, which has helped a lot with that. Just like really like mapping everything out and like really breaking everything down. I'm getting a little bit better. I've had a little bit of an improvement with inferences and necessary assumption, but it's something that obviously I need to keep working on.
Yeah, I hear you. People have trouble with all question types. You're definitely not alone there. The thing is to engage in that in-depth review process to figure out where exactly your misunderstanding is coming from. So if you're the kind of person who, as you said, you're making spreadsheets, categorizations, analysis, that's all fantastic. That's great. Aside from numerical data, though, there's also the qualitative data in terms of what your approach was like, where you might have slipped up here or there, missing a key word, stimulus, question stem, or choices, the tempting wrong answers, discouraging right answers, looking into all of that.
I think that's what it is. I just look over like a specific word. I don't know why I do this. Like I'll see the word generally, and I know generally is never the answer choice to choose. And guess what? I trip up and I choose a generally choice because it's so attractive. I'll spend like easily 30 minutes on one question just trying to analyze it. I don't know, maybe that might sound a little ridiculous, spending 30 minutes on a question, but
no, my reading comp deep dives, we spend an entire hour just discussing the passage, not even the questions. Okay. So I'm all about taking more time. I do want to disagree with you on one particular thing you said, though, which is generally never being the right answer. I don't believe in those blanket statements. I'm sure if we look through the 10,000 LSAT problems out there, the 5,000 on logical reasoning, we may find an example where generally was the correct answer or in reading comp it was. So I would recommend against such a extreme approach or a formulaic approach to dismiss certain choices or automatically choose them based on individual particular words. Everything is contextual. Everything's contextual. If you're looking at approaches some general frameworks you can use that apply to both inference and necessary assumption would actually be to be biased in favor of more moderate choices.
Okay.
More moderate rather than more extreme, because more moderate is more likely to have been supported by or required by the stimulus than more extreme language would be. So that is a general thing you can use going in.
Okay. Yeah, because like I would say it's falling underneath like the spectrum, right? This is spectrum here, and like moderate language would fall under it, right?
Exactly. So moderate language in a way is smaller, so it's more likely to fit within the umbrella of the stimulus, whereas more extreme language is making a broader claim. It's going to go beyond oftentimes what is contained within the stimulus. So in general, if you were totally at a loss down between two, go towards the more moderate language on average and have that mindset going in.
And this is the same thing for necessary, because I know like you always stress necessary assumption is a specific must be true question, right?
Yes, exactly. You got it.
I'm getting better, but very slowly. I never understood that like destroying the argument technique before from previous courses. Thankfully, you came along. I saw it in depth, and it's like you literally just take the answer choice, you negate it, and then you literally just apply that to the argument. And then if it kills the argument, then that's the his choice, right?
Yeah, you've got it. You've got it
I got
down. Yeah, you're doing great. I mean, you got the theory, you got the concepts. The next step is the application. And so when you're approaching problems and you're noticing that you get some wrong, or you have difficulty with some, that's where the post-game analysis in terms of your review process will be the place for you to figure out where exactly you're misunderstanding things.
So I've been doing a lot of like the time section, and I don't know why I'm also getting justification. I haven't gotten to that part of the course, but like justification questions. I don't know why I'm getting those wrong now. You're literally just justifying the argument, right?
Principal application.
I think that's what it is, yes.
Principal application, that's definitely a tougher type. I think of those a little bit like parallel reasoning questions, because you have the abstract general principle. The application is a specific parallel to the principle, generally speaking, or that at least that's the goal, but there may be a certain area where the application falls short. So if there are 3 criteria in the principle and the application only talks about 2 of them, and they're saying that the application follows the principle, the question is then, what's that missing piece?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, it's just I just can't seem to get past like necessary and must be true. I just stopped thinking, and just I don't want to do the LSAT anymore. So it's just
no, we don't want that. We don't want you to stop wanting to do this. We've got to figure out what's holding you back. So focus on that review process, the Socratic review method. I have several full-length master classes in the course going over different review strategies, including student review examples. I've even had students provide their own review processes to show what it looks like.
Okay, yeah, because I'll just do 2 questions and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I don't like this. But obviously that's not a reason to stop, right? Because I don't like something or I don't understand it. It just means I don't understand it.
Yeah, a couple things come to mind. One is that you may want to mix in some quick wins every now and then to keep the morale up. And so that could involve going back to the rule substitution questions you were so excited about coming into this call. Do some of those. Do some reading comp. You said you haven't touched that much yet. Watch the reading comp deep dives. Engage in that process on your own to deeply analyze the passage. And maybe you'll find that you're more comfortable with those than logical reasoning. That could give you some wins also and some variety.
Okay.
Mix it up. Just doing nothing but tough logical reasoning questions can get discouraging over time. So mix it up to avoid that. And then secondly, what if you took the perspective that every question you got wrong was a chance to learn something new? Or what if you actually tried to get 100 questions wrong? So you'd have 100 to review. That means you're working on things that you need to be working on.
I like that. Okay. Yeah. No, definitely. I'll try to think of it from that perspective too. When I go on reviews, like how should I check my answers? So like I'll do like a whole section, right? And then should I check it right away? Because I just do a question. I'm just like, oh my God, I have to see the answer right now. And just like, I have to know if I got it right or wrong. So what should I do?
So I would say for now, start working on, rather than question by question, section by section.
Section by section. Okay.
So you can't check until you finish the section. The reason I suggest section by section for now is that you've got to move away from the instant feedback, the immediate gratification. The first step is going away from question by question and that little show answer thing that shows up on Law Hub. Like you're not going to have that on test day, unfortunately. You're not going to know for a while. But then you also have to be able to let go from sections as well.
Okay.
From question to section, back to back, not checking till after that.
Okay.
So that you could solve logical reasoning, do that section, then you still have to do reading comp, not knowing what your logical reasoning results were. So you want to be able to let go of thinking about those previous ones when you've already had to move on.
Okay. I'm going to work on that.
I got my first LSAT in 24 hours.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I've taken like practice tests leading up these past few days. I was wondering if you have any recommendations specifically for like day before and day of kind of prep to get ready for it.
Yeah, sure. And I've got plenty on this in the course, by the way. There's a whole section just on test day. Biggest thing is day before, rest, do nothing at all. So after this call, I wouldn't do anything else.
Okay.
Day of, some warm-up questions, maybe a favorite passage, logical reasoning question, nothing too much, nothing you haven't seen before.
So let's say out of sheer benevolence to LSAC, I want to take the test again. How would I go about studying for a retake? Would I maybe just go back through the course and rewatch some videos, or really at this point have I like learned everything and maybe I should just focus on taking tests and reviewing them and just keep on that kind of process?
If you've learned everything, then you've got a 180 and there's no reason to retake it.
Yeah.
They actually don't let you retake if you have a 180. But aside from that, I would say weak areas. If there are any weak areas that you've encountered, are there any that come to mind for you?
I see a lot of fluctuation in my reading comp scores for some reason. Like some days I'll miss 2 questions. That will be like a good day, 2 or 3 questions. And then like just yesterday I took a practice test and I missed 9 in the section, which I've never missed that many before. So I think that's like the most inconsistent section for me.
All right. So there you go. Reading comp, of course, is then a natural area to work on. You talked about maybe going through the course again. You could rewatch stuff and maybe you should on weak areas, but also there's so much in the course. You may not have even scratched the surface of a lot.
I definitely didn't get to everything. There's a lot of like classes and stuff.
So if you've covered the basics, that's great.
Yeah.
But if you go on, there's plenty of masterclass material with more advanced techniques. And so if you're looking to bring your prep to the next level, I would dive into that more. And in many recent classes, we've been going over different review strategies to analyze the questions on a deeper level. And so if what you've done has gotten you so far up to a certain point, you could maybe then add on another 5, 10, 15 points or more if you increase the quality of your review and deepen your analysis of the problems that you're getting wrong or having difficulty with. I'm not saying anything about where you're currently at. I'm just speaking generally. There could be a lot more that you could do with more time. And in your situation, you've got plenty of time.
Yeah. And do you see that a lot with reading comp, like such inconsistency in the scoring going between -2 and -9 and just everywhere in between?
Oh yeah. I see variability for students on all sections all the time. And there certainly is reason why you would see that on a section like reading comp though, where a passage could be hit or miss. If there was a tough passage that you didn't really click with, then you might bomb the passage and that's 7 questions lost. Maybe by guessing you get 1 or 2 of them, but that's losing 5 points there maybe. Then another tough passage, maybe you just lose 1 or 2, but together that gets you close to -7, -9. And so you want to make sure that you have the tools and strategies ready to tackle any passage, no matter how complex or difficult it might be. If you decide to retake, then I would say you want to look at other recent exams you may not have touched, make sure that you can deeply understand any passage, no matter the topic, no matter the complexity of the language. And that's something we've been doing in the course with these reading comp deep dives, where we take an hour to just analyze one passage, not even the questions, but really going line by line. And it's tough. It's a lot of work, but you can take the insights from that and apply it to what you do on your own.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like, are these more recent reading comp passages a little more difficult, would you say?
I'd say in general, reading comp has gotten difficult in recent years. I'm speaking broadly, that could be over the course of the past 10, 15, 20 exams compared to those that are in like the 30s or 40s, let's say.
Yeah.
So I think you've seen plenty of tough stuff already if you've done the ones in the 70s, but 80s are tough too. And so you've got some material available that's fresh if you wanted to use it for a retake.
Yeah, I was saving that for the retake. So the order of the test, like usually it's randomized, right?
Yeah, it's randomized.
Okay. That's good. I think perhaps one of the problems with the reading comp is that I always do it last. And so I'm like, even if I'm just doing 2 sections beforehand, like I still think that the mental fatigue maybe is a little bit of a factor. By that point, like I can see the light and I'm just like, let's just get through this and finish this test. So I don't know, maybe like having it scrambled up will help me better.
And that's one thing to do for a retake then, is when you're taking practice tests for a retake, if you decide to retake, mix them up. Then you also want to, of course, think about how can you maintain the energy and drive to deal with reading comp, even if it does come up last, because there is a chance of that, of course.
Yeah, I feel like the thing with reading comp is it seems like something that's easy, like you should be able to get. Like it's just, you just read it and you answer questions. And I feel like that's why I've neglected it, because I've always been like, I could do it. It's just reading, whatever. And
no,
like,
it's dense, but there's tactics you can use to get through it and understand it, even if not every word or phrase or sentence clicks for you. There are little tricks and triggers you can use to help shed light on earlier confusing sentences.
Yeah.
They frame things. It's high level reading. It's difficult. It's very academic.
Have you heard it as a legitimate tactic to read the questions of the passage before you read the passage so you know what you're looking for?
I've heard that as a tactic. I can't say it's a legitimate tactic, though. I don't think there's much reason for it. One big difference is that you've got approximately 7 questions for a reading comp passage versus 1 question for logical reasoning. So while I like question stem first for logical reasoning, you're only holding 1 question stem in your head versus reading comp. I don't think you could hold 7 questions in your head simultaneously. That's pushing normal working memory. And they're also generally asking for the same things, especially for the global ones: main idea, primary purpose, passage organization. You're always looking for those details. You can go back when you need to.
Yeah, I guess in the retake, I would focus more on that. I'm hoping like I can do the -0 thing on the real day.
Take it easy. At this point, you've either got it or you don't. And I believe that you do have the potential to get a great score here. If you feel like there's more that you could be doing, save that energy for the retake prep and see this as a way to get the feel of the actual LSAT administration.
Okay.
And see how you do. It's possible that the prep you've done will get you a great score. But if you want to take it even further and get an even higher score with more time, then channel that into the retake work. But take it easy, relax.
All right. Sounds good. And have you heard anything about the proctor system, and have students had any difficulties with it? Just, I've heard proctors like saying, oh, you can't use scratch paper, or just them not knowing how to administer the test and that affecting people's scores.
It's happened, but it's gotten better. A lot of those things like the scratch paper confusion, that was back in May. And there have been some tech things and such, but I think at this point, they've worked out a lot of the kinks. The best thing you can do, though, is do a little bit on your end to be proactive. One is use ProctorU's tech system to test it out. It's at testout.proctoru.com. I'll email you the link. Cool. And basically that lets you do a system check, even like you could do it today to make sure you're all set for tomorrow. There's an automated part, and then you can also even scroll down and chat live with somebody at ProctorU. They can even look at your system and make sure everything is good to go. Other thing I'll say is before you start your exam, ask them that if they have to interrupt you or take over your screen for any reason, that they pause the timer, so they're not costing you time while they figure things out.
All right. And also, you can't use the bathroom. Is that true?
Correct. You cannot leave the field of view of the camera.
And all right.
So minimize fluid intake and diuretics before you start.
All right. Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, I appreciate your advice.
Logical reasoning, I put in a lot of time, and I've seen a big improvement for where I was like starting off like getting 13, 14. Right now I'm averaging like 17 to 19, right? So that I'm like really happy with that. But I feel like I do better on the hard last questions, and I do worse on the beginning easy 10 questions. I don't know why. So
that's actually fairly common. I think it comes from overthinking things. A lot of times students who are scoring really well, they know that critical analysis and being skeptical of things is useful. Of course, on the LSAT, you want to be skeptical of all these flawed arguments. But the problem is that on the easier questions, you don't want to second guess yourself. You want to go with your gut. Those questions are as easy as they seem. There's not a whole lot of tricks there. And so if something seems good, don't think to yourself, oh, that is too easy. It couldn't possibly be something so obvious. In fact, go with your gut on those. Save that skepticism for the tougher questions that really require it, that are exhibiting more weird arguments and weird flaws. On those first 10 questions in logical reasoning, they are typically as easy as they seem.
What I really wanted to get out of this session today was like your advice on like how to move faster. My reading comp is my worst section. I noticed that it's testing a different skill completely. I've never been able to just get it.
Since you've got about a month, maybe slightly more until you take the LSAT, how could you set yourself up for success on the reading comp specifically? So what could you do to improve your understanding there? You do have some time, and if you have time in your schedule as well to really make the most of your prep over this next month or so. And so I want to go over some different possible strategies you could use for reading comp specifically, some different exercises and drills you could play around with. Do you feel like when you read a passage, you're able to walk away with the main idea?
Main idea, always. I'm very bad with the specific questions.
The detail-oriented ones?
Yes. What did this mean? I get a little, like, what in this passage did they mean by saying this word? And then I'm having trouble. I second guess myself a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So in that case, what you might want to do is after you read the passage, of course, you knock out those global main idea questions. Then for the detail-oriented questions, you could, as a drill on your own, pre-phrase or predict the correct answer without looking at the choices whenever possible. So cover up the choices, maybe with a Post-it if you're doing it out of a book. Otherwise, just do it on your scratch paper, cover it up with your hand in some way, and just write out your own prediction of what the correct answer would be. And then see later if you can match it up with the correct answer. Obviously, your phrasing and articulation will be simpler than LSAC's, but you can get a sense of whether you're on the right track or not.
Yeah, I like that. I guess like I'm focusing too much on the content and the science questions and like the science topics, and I guess that's what's throwing me off.
On your initial read, don't get too bogged down in the details.
I take very long on my initial read.
How long? How many minutes?
My first initial read would be about 5 minutes, like 4 to 5 minutes, but I will always reread it before going to the questions. I started to break down each paragraph and then say, okay, opponents, advocates, this person's viewpoint, like authors present, like stuff like that. So when I go to the questions, I know which paragraph to go to. So that's what I've been really focused on, but it takes me a lot of time.
That's a good approach for untimed practice to dissect what's going on, but that just isn't going to work under timed conditions.
Clearly.
Let's look at by the numbers though. If you've got 4 to 5 minutes devoted only to your initial read, and you've got about 7 questions per passage, that's giving you something like 30 seconds per question. I would focus more on the pre-phrasing prediction technique that I suggested for you to get a better sense of your understanding of the details. But again, not trying to memorize all the details up front, rather noting where they are in the passage so you can find them when you need them. And you could take some notes on the scratch paper, just not too much.
Okay, yeah, I definitely highly note, but I clearly lack something important in that. I think it's that I get lost in the details and in the subject matter. I feel like logical reasoning gives you more of a direction versus reading comp. It's easier in the question types because they're all like must be truths. It's not like you're like trying to figure out, it's just like whatever's there, but I don't know why I have just a lot more trouble with that type of skill.
Most of them are must be truths, but then the tougher ones in reading comp are more analogous to difficult logical reasoning, like strengthen, weaken, and parallel and such. They're rare and they're more difficult. And so I would certainly skip them and save them for last when necessary. But those are the ones where you're going to want to slow down more. And during your review, again, pre-phrase, predict. If it's a parallel question in reading comp, make sure you fully understand the source method of reasoning in the stimulus.
Okay.
A great example of this, by the way, is there's a passage on the Chinese talk story with Maxine Hung Kingston. I believe it's in the prep test 54, somewhere around there. Look at the parallel question in that passage because it's extremely difficult, but slowing down and dissecting it.
I actually did that one.
Nice. Yeah, that's a tough one. Review that kind of question to really make sure that you understand the initial method of reasoning. Because if you don't get that, you're not going to get the answer. But it requires in-depth analysis during your review to make sure you get all the ins and outs of what they're talking about.